Yeah, I feel like it probably opened with you rubbing your eyes, Sheldon Richmond.
We're live.
Oh, well.
I can't believe it's true.
Finally, it's 11 minutes past being on time, but damn it, we're anarchists, so we don't care about the trains or the podcast running on time. This is Free Association, brought to you by our lords and masters at Liberty.me. I am Lucy. Over there in California for now is Sheldon, recently shorn, you may note. Actually, I was recently shorn too, so we have that in common. Yeah, we're here to talk as usual. I'm a little bit sick, so we'll see if I can get myself going into rant mode. I've got some coffee here. So
you don't sound sick. You don't sound sick.
I'm fighting it off. I'm almost done fighting. Sheldon wants to talk about our future Lord, Lady, and Mistress, Hillary Clinton, probably, and how she is not going to be indicted because James Comey doesn't wanna. That's the short version. And Sheldon, if you would start us off, maybe we can get to the long version and the ranting version and things like that.
Okay, and I'm hoping some people can help me out because I am perplexed. I listened to Comey several times today. And for those of you who are news impaired, in other words, the healthy among us who aren't glued to the news, Comey, James Comey, head of the FBI, whom both parties like, both of the major parties like, they claim he's a good guy. He's not as good as they say he is, obviously. He says he doesn't think that Hillary Clinton should be indicted or prosecuted. Of course, that's not his job. His job is only to investigate. But while he did that, he also laid out a scathing set of facts about her, which punched holes in lies she's been telling for months or over a year, I guess, regarding her private email servers, by the way, plural. We now learn that she had more than one. And more than one device for email. He claims, he says that they found that her email was unsecured. Gmail is more secure than her email was. She had like a server in her basement. That contrary to what she said, 110 of the emails in 52 some chains of emails were classified in one way or another. She said she never passed or received classified emails or material in attached emails. What other lies did he expose? That she destroyed lots of so-called work email when she said she only destroyed personal email. How they know that, I'm not sure because it's irretrievable, but they seem to know that. Anyway, basically said she's full of crap. But we're not going to indict her because she didn't intend to violate the law. So I'm totally perplexed. She obviously intended to avoid the State Department servers. That was intentional. I don't think she did that thinking she was putting in a popcorn maker in her basement. Oh my gosh, it's a server. I didn't know it was a server. I thought it was a popcorn maker. I was wondering why my popcorn maker was sending me email. So that was intentional. I don't see how they can say she didn't intentionally send classified emails when Comey says 110 emails contain classified information, which was marked classified. And then he also said any reasonable person would have known that the conversations she was having shouldn't have been on an unsecured server. And then he said anyone else in her situation would suffer administrative, or I forget what the other term was, sanctions. In other words, loss of job and loss of security clearance.
Right.
But he said that's not my job. Right. They do criminal investigations. So in other words, if she was still Secretary of State, it would be grounds for dismissal, but certainly grounds for stripping her of her security clearance. So maybe we'll have the first president of the United States without a security clearance. That'd be cool.
That would be really good. It's okay. She's not secretary anymore. She's just running for president and likely to win. So
apparently she still has security clearance. Ex-secretaries of state often retain their security clearance. Plus, she's going to be getting briefings as the nominee, like Trump is.
Yeah.
So
I'm not sure when that starts, because she's the presumptive nominee. Does it start after the conventions? I'm not sure.
Well, they'll start after they formally get the nomination, right? Because right now they're presumptive that it's possible they won't get the nominations, but of course they will.
Somehow.
It's not
humanly possible.
It's very probable that they will, but right. So, I can look at it the different ways. As a libertarian, I can pretty much just laugh at this crap, right? Who cares? So she apparently exposed the names of CIA agents around the world. That's okay. And we can also say that it seems to me people who have done far lesser things are in jail, and their intent didn't seem to matter very much. They're prosecuting some sailor, I think, on a sub, who took a selfie of himself for his wife or girlfriend, and in the back was a blurred panel that had, like dials and, meters, but blurred. And when they found that, and then he threw the phone away or something. They found out about this somehow. He's being prosecuted, maybe he already has been, for mishandling classified information. Now, that obviously was not intentional. He probably was not thinking, there are dials and things back there which the enemy, quote, the enemy will want to see. Plus, it was blurred from what I read. So there, and in a whole bunch of federal so-called crimes, intent doesn't matter. But in Hillary's case, in Clinton's case, intent matters. So it seems to be very discretionary about whether intent matters. I read Glenn Greenwald's piece at The Intercept today, and he has lots of interesting things to say, but he said he agreed with Comey's decision not to recommend a prosecution, and he didn't think it rose to a criminal offense, and I didn't quite understand the reasoning for that. Now, on the other hand, I think as a libertarian we can object to what clearly looks like special treatment for, her and, people of her status when you're an insider. Why there was not an independent prosecutor or independent, I should say, investigator, I don't know why. It seems like she should have wanted that, just to remove the cloud. There's this huge cloud over her head. After all, this is the Justice Department under the guy that she worked for, right, as Secretary of State, Obama. The head of the Justice Department is the mentor, in a way, of Bill Clinton, who put her on the federal bench. This is Loretta Lynch. They met last week for half an hour on Lynch's private plane. I mean, it all looks very, very bad, even if in fact nothing wrong happened. The rules do say, the rules for U.S. attorneys and such like say there may not even be the appearance of impropriety or conflict. And yet, all these things have happened. So the cloud is not, I'm happy to say, is not passed. There is a cloud over her. And why did they hand Trump? I don't know why they would want to hand Trump something like this. It's not going away. He can make hay out of it between now and November, especially the Lynch Bill Clinton meeting. And I love how our defenders are calling it, even I think Hillary Clinton called it, a brief chance meeting. Well, okay, there are three elements to that phrase: brief, chance, and meeting. She got one of them right. It was a meeting. It wasn't brief. It was half an hour. That's plenty of time to talk about a case. And it wasn't chance. Chance is if you're walking in opposite directions in an airport corridor, and you bump into each other, neither knowing the other was going to be there, and you say, "Oh, hi, how are you?" He climbed onto her private plane when he learned that the plane was there and that she was boarding it. That's not chance. So the whole thing, looks the way Trump is going to portray it to look, like it was a big rigged thing. And I don't know why they would want to give him something like this, but they did. Anyway, that's my sort of quick take on it. Not very.
There are a couple of avenues. There's always the question, is there some sort of Democrat bias? And I think in some cases you do have a liberal/Democrat bias in certain things. I don't see it here as much. I think that anybody in that position, in her position, with her position, would have been let off the hook, I think, just by virtue of this is how it works. If you indict someone who's likely to actually win the presidency, you're going to throw the whole campaign into upheaval. I think it looks conniving, and I'm not saying it's not, conniving and borderline conspiratorial, but only in the way that DC status quo is conniving and borderline conspiratorial probably every day, or at least every other day. You know, it would be too much work. It would be too much of a pain in the ass to actually indict her. And that seems like a non-conclusion, but I really think that's what it comes down to, just the headache of it all. I think Comey's statement was sort of bizarre because it was all too honest, because he sort of said there's no precedent for charging someone with this, but in another case, we totally might charge someone with this, but we're not going to do that because we don't want to. And I don't know what you're supposed to do with that. As you said, it's handing, I mean, Trump must love this, honestly. I'm sure he's having a great day because he gets to say the game is rigged, and it is. He just wants to be the king of the rigged game. He wants to be the game maker. But he's not wrong. Well,
it certainly looks very, very bad. It stinks. And if you, I read when the Bill Clinton Lynch meeting took place and became known. I read somebody was quoting from the U.S. Attorney's Manual, and it says very clearly that you need to recuse yourself if there's even the appearance of impropriety or conflict of interest.
Well, she doesn't need to recuse herself if it doesn't even get that far, though, I suppose. Well, she said they would follow the FBI's recommendation, right? And the FBI says, yeah, why bother?
Yeah, right. So, now it becomes moot. You're right. It becomes moot now because, obviously...
Sort of. But it also has a bit of a chilling effect, doesn't it, on the prospect of her actually being indicted. There is...
Right. At the time, going back a few days, yes, it might have had a chilling effect. Now, of course, that means Comey saw that the fix was in and had to take his lead. He, like I said, both parties, actually, the Republicans and the Democrats, say he's an independent man, of great integrity. And even Trump has praised Comey. So it's a little odd now for Trump to be attacking Comey. I heard him, I think, last week saying that he's had no confidence in him.
Well, sometimes an independent sort of guy means that he's double bad because he sort of, is authoritarian, not bipartisan, or not partisan. He's not he's not biased in one way or another. That might make him even worse.
Right.
I learned today I had forgotten that Comey, when he was Deputy Attorney General, he's the guy who ran to John Ashcroft's hospital room because, Gonzalez and someone else were trying to extend the NSA spying, basically to make Ashcroft, in the hospital bed, grab his hand and have him sign off on it or whatever. And Comey thought that was kind of bullshit. So he has this one commendable moment in his past, but he, the rest of his history, he thinks, the Ferguson effect is a real scary thing. And something else awful I read about him today that I'm blanking on. So, yeah, he has that one commendable moment, and then
but
the FBI. Though.
And that was regarding warrantless wiretapping. But he's bad. On surveillance, he's taken bad positions, right? So that's like the one thing that was an anomaly. I had a good impression of him too because of that story. But then I read his record is not good on this stuff. He wants extensive surveillance.
I don't know. Maybe from his point of view, that was taking advantage of Ashcroft because he was hospitalized. It might have been a very impure sort of motivation, a personal fondness for Ashcroft. I don't know. That was rather blatantly disturbing for them to be running to Ashcroft's hospital room like that. But also because they were kind of usurping his authority at the time because Ashcroft was incapacitated, and therefore Comey was basically the Attorney General while Ashcroft was incapacitated. So to run off to Ashcroft while he's sort of, out of the loop for the moment because he's in the hospital is it could be construed as a power struggle, nothing more. I don't know what's in his brain, but
right. He might have just, like you say, might have been out of loyalty to Ashcroft, and so they were going to have him in almost in an unconscious state extend the warrantless wiretapping. But
I remember, I gotta give a brief tangent. I don't remember the details of this at the time, the hospital room struggle with the NSA thing. But I remember I was a teen, and when Ashcroft went to the hospital, I felt really bad because I really hated him. And I felt bad because the guy I hated was in the hospital. And I was like, I don't know how to react to this because I really hate him. That was my teenage thought at the time. I don't remember the rest of the details. So I guess the wider question with Hillary, well, one of the many avenues to go down from this news is what would happen. I mean, we talked about the sailor who is getting. I mean, there's a difference between what Clinton did and what Snowden, Manning, Ellsberg did, because in the best possible way, obviously, they deliberately stole classified information and said, here you go, world, enjoy. I mean, that's good. They're heroes, all three of them.
Yeah.
But she, the more incompetent, it's more about incompetence and not following sort of protocol. It is this milder thing, but Comey keeps saying a reasonable person would know that this was not good security procedure.
Yeah.
There were 8 emails that were top secret. I don't even know what that. I don't, what that entails. It's probably not. It probably wasn't nuclear secrets, but it could have been. We don't know. But if a reasonable person should have known this, then why are we saying, oh, nuts to mens rea? She didn't know what she was doing, and because she didn't know what she was doing, it wasn't deliberate, so we can't. And by then, the same breath, say a reasonable person should have known better. I mean,
and this
it was like
no, go ahead.
I was going to say that the statement is very peculiar because it feels thorough, but it's not directly self-contradicting, but it almost is in most paragraphs. It's this, but this, and it's very odd.
I agree. And as far as intent, there were, I think, 125 emails released last week or turned over that weren't earlier turned over. In other words, that should have been. In other words, she said she'd given everything, and it turns out she didn't give everything. And one of them clearly showed, I mean, I read about this, I forget where I read it, but I read the text of it, actually, that it was an email from her to Huma Aberdeen, her, I think that was the last name, her, that very close aide who happens to be married to the former congressman who used to show us private parts over Twitter to the girls. Leave me outside, saying early on, this is 2009, right? She's basically just taken office, saying they're setting up the system now regarding emails and files. We better, how'd she put it? We better be involved in this so we can set it up our way. So, clearly what she was trying to do was make sure that people weren't going to get a hold of a lot of this stuff through FOIA, through the Freedom of Information Act. I mean, it seems obvious. So she wasn't doing it out of confusion or I didn't want to carry two, phones. That was the answer, the reason she gave us in the beginning, right? Oh, it was for convenience, she said. I didn't want to carry 2 BlackBerries, even though somebody pointed out there was a way to have her BlackBerry get both accounts. So she was doing it for self-interested, calculated reasons, but that didn't seem to count very much. And then Peter Van Buren, used to be in the State Department under Obama, wrote a book called "We Meant Well." He turned against the Iraq War and all that stuff. Scott Horton interviews him a lot. I read an article of his where he reproduced some of the emails which had been obtained through the Freedom of Information Act, but things were redacted, of course, right? Sensitive information. And when things are redacted, there's a code that's placed, a State Department code, which is basically corresponds to the general reason why the redaction was made, right? So if you have this list, which is distributed to the media, I guess, or anybody, you can say, oh, okay, I see why this black bar is here or why it's, whited out. It's because of code, XYZ. And then I look it up and says, oh, I see, named a CIA agent. Well, he has some of her email. I mean, we have some of her emails because they've been released that have redactions with the code saying the reason the redaction has been done is because there was a CIA agent named here. She's passing stuff over her unsecured. Now, you may think this is a good thing or a bad thing, but let's get the facts. We can leave the evaluation to afterwards. She's sending and receiving emails that are naming the names of CIA agents. People have been prosecuted and maybe even imprisoned for things like that.
Yeah.
So I don't think we've been given a good explanation.
Do you think, I see the commenters on Liberty.me are sort of mulling this over. Do you find this to be totally deliberate on her part? This is pure guesswork, but I always...
What being totally deliberate?
Well, I mean, I always interpret, and I sort of interpret Trump the same way, which, is how I say that I believe he's a politician, not as much as he claims otherwise, I imagine that Hillary Clinton has a very particular way of thinking of excusing the type of power tripping excuses that she does to herself. I don't know, though. I mean, and I wonder, she's not like a bumbling grandma to entirely, but when you're talking about tech stuff, the disturbing thing is a lot of these people, the people deciding the tech stuff, they really don't know what they're talking about. I mean, they don't know how it works. And my phone is making noises and I must shut it up. They don't know how it works. And setting up your own personal server and having that happen suggests that you know something. But when she talks about tech policy, when she talks about encryption and things like that, she's just as, Bernie Sanders, Trump, they all have old man, old womanitis, and they don't, they sort of say, oh, we'll compromise, it's fine, and they don't ever clarify. So I think almost more troubling in some ways than sort of malevolence and haha, I can do what I want, is the idea that maybe at least on some issues, they don't know what they're doing. It's not just that they're trying to fuck us over and do what they want. It's that they don't know what they're doing. I don't know. They may be tangential, but I wonder. I
don't think she knows the details. I'm sure that she's even kind of kidded about not knowing about that stuff. That could be more opposed. But I have a feeling she knew the overall purpose, and I don't know whose idea it was. I don't know if she said, hey, can we put a server in my basement, or whether an aide came to her and said, we could put this in your basement, and that way you can bypass the State Department's, state.gov domain. I have a sense she knew that, and I think it was to avoid. It was to more closely control the emails, and her foundation might be, part of the reason for this. I mean, they were dealing with foreign governments, and she's Secretary of State, and the idea was, we lose control if they're on the server in the State Department. But things sent to me, obviously things she sends to members of the State Department are going to be on State Department servers because it's the receiving server. But all the stuff she gets, especially when they're coming from people not in the State Department, I think she wanted to make sure she controlled who had access to that stuff, and it's outside of her control if it's in Foggy Bottom, right, in D.C., where she can't get to it. I mean, not that she can't get to it, she can't stop it being given to others under the Freedom of Information Act. I have no trouble believing that was the reason. I don't think it was she wanted to carry 2 phones or any of that stuff. And this is why the Comey thing still perplexes me. Yeah.
I mean, avoiding FOIA, that does suggest deliberateness. That was my very first thought when the story broke was, oh God, of course you're trying to avoid FOIA. And I've gotten a bit distracted from that original assumption over the last year, but I'm not suggesting it was total bumbling, but I do wonder what goes on in their minds sometimes. And I do think when it comes to technology, in certain ways, politicians are disturbingly illiterate about technology. I mean, think about Justin Amash using Facebook and explaining his votes, the sort of technological prowess then posting on Facebook regularly is that's what the young generation of politicians can do. The older ones are
well, doesn't Lindsey Graham say he never sent an email? I don't know why I'd brag about that, but
And I remember some of the Clinton emails are sort of, they do have an incompetent vibe, or sort of, well, a pampered politician, I don't know how to do things myself vibe. A couple of the more banal ones had that. So, yeah, I'm not surprised by this. I mean, I never really expected her to be indicted. I realize it's easy to say that now, but I couldn't picture it happening.
So, what else can we say about this, or this should take us off in other paths, right? What else? We can always talk about Trump's alleged Jewish star in the tweet about Hillary Clinton.
Oh, well, I mean, do you want to share with the class about that?
Because I found that pretty funny. Well, again, unless you're news impaired, and proudly so, you probably know that there was a tweet put out by the campaign, Trump's campaign, over the weekend, which had a picture of Hillary Clinton, and then next to her was a panel with a bunch of $100 bills, and then it said the most corrupt candidate ever, or something like that. But those words were in a 6-pointed star, which is a Jewish star or a sheriff star or a plain star, whatever depending on how you pass the Rorschach test. So some people immediately pointed out that this seemed to imply some connection between Jews and corruption. The odd thing here is that Clinton's not Jewish.
No.
So I don't quite know. I haven't heard it in all the discussion. No one's quite reminded us of that. So, but on the other hand, this apparently originated on a white supremacist, anti-Semitic message board. Now,
how did the Trump people find it?
That's my question. The Trump guy, who's the head of social media, who said he posted it, said he didn't get it off that. In fact, it was passed around, and he got it just off a Twitter account from some anti-Hillary person, but not. He said he didn't get it from a site. He also said, "Oh, it's just a plain star. You can find it on Microsoft Shapes. I guess Microsoft has some online database of shapes, which you can cut and paste or something, or copy and paste." He claimed he didn't say he got it from there because he didn't put it together. Now once the controversy it was aired, it came out and people criticized him. They took it down and replaced the star with a circle. So those words, the most corrupt candidate ever, is now in a circle. I guess it's still on Twitter if you want to find it. Yeah, I don't know what to make of that.
Well, the thing is, it's not like you can deny it when it actually did originate from a white supremacist message board. It's one of those things where I'm willing to believe that they potentially just don't know what they're doing. And you can even say, well, the star is like an award. So it's like she got the award for most corrupt politician in history. But, I mean, it came from the message board. You know, people aren't making this up. As soon as I saw it, I was like, I made the association. And you said, before, she's not Jewish. Well, to the true anti-Semite, everybody you don't like is Jewish. That is the rule. Everybody is secretly Jewish if you don't like them, if you're a true anti-Semite. I recently suffered a delightful barrage of Nazi tweets a couple weeks ago. I had to block about 100 people who were calling me Jewish, and I wasn't sure how to respond, because if you deny it, vigorously, that suggests you think there's something wrong with being Jewish.
Yeah, right.
I tried to subtly hint that my name is Steigerwald, which is an incredibly German last name. If you're going to be a racist, I strongly believe you should get it. You should get it right. You should be accurate. There's actually a discussion among the skinheads on Orange is the New Black about this sort of thing. Like, they're trying to be accurate. They're trying to hate on Latinas, but they don't know the difference. The stereotypes about Dominicans or Cubans. So like, they're trying to get it right. I've been thinking you should be accurate in your racism. And I watched that episode and I thought it was funny. Well,
if you're going to be racist, at least be meticulous. Yeah. And conscientious. Conscientious racism.
Racists are not known for being terribly intelligent or deliberate or careful. So, I'm not going to hold my breath that they're going to get this one right. But fundamentally, that is the rule of the true anti-Semite, is if you don't like someone, they are Jewish. Jewish people hide. This is me great if someone takes it out of context. Like this idea that Jewish people hide among the population. They don't, they're secretly, they never reveal their status even today, which...
Yeah, well, It goes
Also
back to All in the Family. There was a scene in All in the Family with where
it may go back farther than that, just a little bit.
Where Archie Bunker is saying, Jews often change their last name, but you can tell that they're Jewish because they don't change the first name. So he says, I know a guy named Smith, Morris Smith. And, of course, Mike, the son-in-law, Rob Reiner, who was supposed to be the liberal commie socialist son-in-law, said, "Oh yeah, Abraham Lincoln."
Yeah, that's funny.
That was funny. It was funny.
Archie Bunker was supposed to be a lovable racist, right?
Yeah.
Somehow
He made racism acceptable.
Also, Rob Reiner was the pretentious liberal, huh? That's a real stretch there. Anywho, I think,
that was typecasting.
This idea stretches back a little bit pre-All in the Family.
The preachy moralist, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are people in the world, not only do they have great things to say about Hitler because they're terrible, but, they still believe that the protocols of the Elders of Zion is real meeting minutes, it's not just an obvious hoax. I mean, I have engaged with some of these horrible people before in the past. Yep. I've wanted to be like, explain how your brain got here, but eventually I blocked vigorously, and I upped my security settings on various social media sites in case they.
Yeah, I'm probably going to get it. I'm probably going to start getting the flack because I'm friends with you. So.
Well,
I don't know her. I don't know her.
Wow, so much for anarchist solidarity. Wow, that was hurtful. I feel like.
On the other hand, they may have a case against Clinton. Bill Clinton, of course, was very pro-Likud and pro-Israel, and he really set the Palestinians up. I'm saying this in all seriousness now. Mm-hmm. He set the Palestinians up terribly, and he with that big meeting in 2000 at Camp David when he said, "Don't worry, if things fall through, we won't blame you," and then things fell through, and he totally blamed the Palestinians. I mean, they were. Yeah. And he was totally anti-Iran because Israel was anti-Iran and wanted him to be anti-Iran.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, that's mostly U.S. politicians' status quo. I'm not crazy about Bernie Sanders, obviously, for all sorts of reasons. But remember when he said that Palestinians were people and that sometimes there should be a proportionate response to when there's, terrorism or violence coming from Palestinians? Yeah. Oh, right. Like, that was whoa, you can't say that.
Right, and he put on the platform committee in order to try to get a better plank, and the arguments that went over this, I mean, I watched some of them on like C-SPAN or replays, were really bad. But he had James Zogby, who's head of, I think, the Arab American Institute, on. He got him on the platform committee. He got who's the other guy? Used to be at Harvard, black intellectual. I can't remember his name. Yeah, so I'm drawing a blank, but they pushed for having some recognition of the suffering and use of the word occupation, which of course the Clinton people on the committee were dead against. I don't know how it ended up. Maybe it's not even. It's probably not finished yet, so it hasn't ended. But it was quite an interesting fight. And then of course, and so Hillary spoke at AIPAC and gave a totally slavishly pro-Likud speech. But so did Trump. The funny thing is, so did Trump. Actually, I believe he gave his first AIPAC. Yeah, but he was the one who got in trouble for a couple of weeks earlier by saying, I really think we need to appear neutral. The funny thing is he said at the same time, which means the whole world heard him, we have to make them think we're neutral. It was like, hey, I'm not really being neutral. We just have to make the Palestinians who are watching this think we're neutral. So he didn't even mean that. And then that disappeared. He doesn't even talk about that anymore. Now he's totally pro-Israel.
Well, you realize that at some point last year, 3 weeks before he said the opposite, he said we should accept some Syrian refugees. It's like from last summer. I'd have to look it up. And 3 weeks later, he was like, "Oh my God, we can't do that." I mean, he's
that's right. And then he said, "When I become president, you're going back. You're going back."
Yeah, all those American citizens who committed terrorism.
So these two people are absolutely terrible. We agree about that. So where does that leave Gary Johnson? I've been seeing him on CNN. He's been getting on CNN.
First of all, before we get to Gary Johnson, I will say that because our segue was a little lacking, there's just something about people who praise Hitler that makes me suspect they don't really care about, the oppressed people in Palestine. There's all the difference in the world between disliking Israel or, all nation states ever, and being an actual anti-Semite. If you like Hitler, I don't trust your, any motives you might have for being against Israel. Just laying that out there to clarify in case anyone's ever confused. But if you want to talk about Gary Johnson, we could talk about how the town hall was really bad, like really bad. Like for people.
Did we not talk about that? I'm not against talking about it.
We were talking about it was about to happen, and we were getting mildly psyched for it. And then even for me, who has this feeling about Gary Johnson, I was impressed by how badly he did. I was actually kind of astounded.
Luckily, not many people watched it, I read.
We were so jazzed. We were so jazzed about a Libertarian getting an hour on cable news. I mean, that seems like it should have been a big deal. And
I agree.
His best answer was on immigration, which is an interesting counter to Trump. He actually managed to point out that, he was a governor of a border state, and he pointed out some of the things that Trump's policies would actually entail, profiling, coming to the door, actually kicking in the door, not bothering him because he's a white dude, but bothering any brown people, anyone ambiguous, anyone Hispanic, which is a lot of people. And so few people have pointed out what it would fundamentally entail to do this kind of thing. Even people who are less blatantly hateful sounding than Trump, very few of them have actually pointed this out. That was Johnson's best answer by far. Almost everything else was a bit of a disaster. Which was unfortunate. Yeah.
No, I agree. I was really. I mean, they ought to have Johnson, especially, but well too. I mean, they already need to have a set answer to the question: what's a libertarian? I mean, how basic can you get? And he likes this. He starts over saying, he has this little too laid back style. I thought he came across as with the exception of the answer you just talked about, maybe there was something else that I'm not remembering, but they sounded like unprepared, ill-prepared technocrats, I thought, for the most part. They did not seem prepared. They were sitting back, and it just was like, we're having a town hall, nobody told me, okay, what do you want to ask? I mean, they didn't seem prepared at all. So when he's asked what's a libertarian, he goes into this. Well, we're social conservatives, and we're fiscal conservatives and socially accepting, and he does throw in a line about war. Okay, the war has unintended consequences, but I don't know why you wouldn't start off. Why wouldn't it occur to you to start off? The word libertarian, the root of the word libertarian is liberty. That's what we're about. I mean, how basic is that? I mean, get it going like that. Do people know what a fiscal? They probably think he said fiscally conservative. What's a fiscally conservative? I don't know what a physical conservative is. Is that somebody who's like really strong, or he's conserving his energy, so he's like this, I mean,
I don't know. People
where are they getting these answers? You start off talking about liberty, and it seems to me the template for any answer on policy ought to be the template. Now you fill in the blanks appropriately. You ought to be thinking to yourself, okay, what about issue X? Okay, your first thought, of course you should have already thought about this, but number one, how has the state caused or exacerbated this problem I'm being asked about? Number two, how would liberty eliminate or at least ameliorate the problem? That ought to be the template for any answer. Isn't that what it's about? Instead, I don't know if people have any idea what a libertarian is after listening to him. They may like a particular policy statement, but do you think they come away with, I think I get these guys?
Yeah, I mean, the best interpretation might be they caught one moment, maybe hopefully the immigration answer, and that, was like, God, I hate Trump and Clinton, So this guy said a thing about immigration I like. Maybe I'll Google Libertarian and see what I find.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best possible thing that could have come out of the town hall. Now, I know other libertarians who think that was, a net, like that and Johnson and Weld in general are a net bad for our brand. And they also think that Johnson, especially Weld, but Weld is he almost lost the VP nom at the convention. I mean, he's already sort of dubious. They think that Johnson is not a libertarian in the sense that he's never read anything ever about the philosophy of it. He can't sum it up in one sentence. And I don't think you need to read everything. I've read samplings of sort of our econ forefathers, a little Bastiat, a little bit of Thoreau, a sprinkling of Rothbard, but I haven't read, the piles of Hayek and Mises that I'm sort of supposed to. But I still think I have a good understanding of the philosophical grounding and the variations into the thing we call libertarianism. And these other libertarians I know, I'm not going to name names, basically think that Johnson is picking and choosing, and he doesn't have any sort of thesis statement about liberty that he can go to. And that appears to be true, certainly. I don't know.
What really distresses me is that, and we've talked about this before, the year is unique because the Libertarian candidate has this lane all to himself because there's no Republican engaging in free market rhetoric, not even limited government rhetoric, not even constitutional rhetoric. Trump doesn't mention the Constitution except for the Second Amendment. He doesn't talk about limiting government power. His explanation for, when he talks about job loss and how he's going to bring jobs back, he'll give a half-hour speech on protectionism. There's one sentence about taxes and regulations, which make it attractive for companies to leave the country. That's what he gives. I listened to that speech that he gave last week. One sentence on that. The rest of it is they're stealing our jobs, so it's as if it has nothing to do with taxes and regulations, which might discourage anybody from investing here, which is nonsense anyway, because actually there's a huge amount of manufacturing going on. It's just that they're robots rather than people in the factories. What Johnson needs, right, I agree with you. He does not, that seems true, what you said. He doesn't seem to know the basic philosophy. And again, he doesn't have to read Human Action or Man, Economy, and State. He could be reading back issues of the Freeman, I mean even pre-Richmond Freeman, and be getting that. You don't need to be reading heavy literature. He's got this lane to himself. When he talks about free trade, he confuses me. He talked about it. He was asked about it at the town hall, and he said something like, "Well, when I was governor, I worked to level the playing field on trade." I don't know what he means by that.
I don't either.
I think he means, because of something he said at another time, that he's against crony capitalism and he wants to level the playing field. Crony capitalism meaning some people are getting benefits others don't get, and he wants to. I think that's what he means when he uses that phrase. But it's confusing in terms of international trade, because there are protectionists who think you need to level the playing field, right? It's not fair if we trade with if our country trades with a low-wage country, that's not fair. We have to level the playing field by making sure they have the same environmental regulations and labor regulations and minimum wage laws, right? It's a protectionist argument to level the playing field. The very advantage of trade is because the playing field is not level, right? I mean, I can do things that you can't do. You can do things that I can't do. Therefore, we make a lot of what we each can make, and then we trade. It's not level. To level it out, it makes no sense. There's no point in trading then. Right. So he's got to get a clear statement on trade, because Trump is making such a big deal of protectionism, and of course Clinton is no better. Rhetorically, she's less offensive.
Right.
But she's a corporatist. So again, he and Weld have this lane to themselves, but he needs to read some Bastiat or some Hazlitt and be able to give a clear statement about free trade, unilateral free trade good. If we can't get that, sure, okay, bilateral trade where we actually lower barriers, but we don't have all these other things. IP, I don't know where he stands on IP. He's probably not good on it, at least good from my point of view. I don't know where you stand on that. We haven't talked about IP. But, that's the problem with the TPP and these other things. They impose very stringent IP rules on developing countries, so it stifles them.
And in general, and this is far too much nuance for American politics, even regardless of the IP thing, and you're right about that, there is a question of whether a free trade agreement is free trade, because you have this country-to-country decision making, and whether someone who's truly for free trade should feel at least somewhat uncomfortable about that, because at least it's sort of giving free trade, the ideal, a different name, because it sounds as if that's how free trade has to happen. Government, we're going to deal, free trade. I mean, yeah. And the IP thing is really bad.
Right. No, go.
I'm saying I'm anti-IP, but it took me a long time to get there, and I'm actually like an extra infant on the issue. It's better being like Facebook friends with Stephen Kinsella and things like that. I have much to learn.
We can do a session on that sometime. Some slow news week.
Yeah.
What was I going to say about it? There's a good piece at The Intercept today, not by Greenwald, but by somebody else, pointing out exactly how it's pretty much all about IP. I mean, tariffs are already kind of low. It'd be good if they go to zero. So this person is arguing that this is not really about lowering tariffs. This is about protecting U.S. corporations that want to extend IP protection on pharmaceuticals and other things. And so it imposes a stringent IP regime as the cost of being able to bring goods to the U.S. market. And that's not good. I mean, and that happened with NAFTA and the WTO, and IP is at the forefront now. American manufacturers, American companies don't need tariffs any longer. They don't care about tariffs. First of all, they have factories all over the world, so they don't need they don't need to protect the American market with tariffs. So they've lost interest in that. That's passé. What they want is stringent IP, so that people making Nikes in Bangladesh or wherever they make them can't wake up one morning and say, you know what, the hell with Nike, we don't need Nike. This is our factory. Let's make something that looks like Nikes. We'll take off the swoosh, but because Nike will crush them under the IP regime, they'll get crushed with the help of the local government in that country.
Yeah. And if it somehow gets to the U.S., the fucking Department of Homeland Security will be raiding stores selling, Nuki or whatever off-brand shoes we're talking about. I mean,
right, because we're talking about shoes that take maybe
like that's how seriously they take this.
And the shoes maybe cost $30 to make, and with the Nike swoosh, they're like $150. I don't know what they are these days. $150, $200, $250. But the factory there says, the hell with Nike. We don't need Nike. We'll make shoes. Who cares if they look like Nike? Can you own a look? I mean, my anti-IP position is you can't own the look of something. How do you own the look of something? How do you hold it? Here's the look. I own this. So they would then sell them for $50, make them for $30 and sell them for $50, and undercut Nike because they look enough like Nikes that kids might buy them, although kids might still want Nikes or Air Jordans or whatever. Here's the funny thing. Trump is dead against the TPP, yet he seems not to know anything about it. I put this on Facebook the other day. Have you ever heard him? I've listened to plenty of his speeches. I've never heard him say anything particular about TPP. He's just
not
against
a particular kind of guy.
Yeah, but he doesn't seem to be aware. If he's aware. By the way, I see a light switch over there on your wall. Can I just switch that off? I just noticed a light switch right there. So he doesn't ever tell his audience that, oh, by the way, while I'm against TPP, let me tell you something about it. Tariffs on U.S. goods would go to zero. Oh, wait, I can't tell you that, can I? Also, IP will be protected, which I'm sure he's all in favor of. After all, he's the guy that was going to go after someone who wanted to put out a T-shirt that said, "You're fired" on it. He threatened to sue that guy. I don't know whatever happened to that case. Maybe the guy probably dropped the idea. Because that was his phrase from The Apprentice, and someone wanted to put out a T-shirt that said, "You're fired." He said, You do that, buddy, and I'll see you in court.
As if no one had said you're fired before Donald Trump said it a lot on a television show.
He should love but my point is he should love TPP. Why doesn't he love the TPP?
Because it's not a protectionist vibe, and he's going for a vague,
right? He doesn't want to lower tariffs against American goods in foreign countries. He wants to raise tariffs here.
Yeah.
But that means he doesn't care about export. The two people he doesn't seem to care about then. He loves people that make stuff for the export market, but he doesn't seem to care about people who make stuff for the... No, sorry, I got that wrong, don't I? He doesn't seem to care about people who make stuff for the export market because his trade wars would hurt them. And he doesn't care about consumers. So he only cares about people whose jobs are challenged by goods coming in. But of course, the biggest challenge to manufacturing jobs are not Chinese or Vietnamese or Cambodians or Sri Lankans. It's technology. It's ideas. That's the biggest threat to existing jobs. Ideas. That's what has replaced most of the factory workers. Robots. And it's happening in China too. And it's even old hat to complain about China because China's losing jobs to lower wage Vietnam. In other words, there are economies that are less developed than China. China's come a long way.
Oh, yeah.
They now in Asia they're among the high wage places in Asia.
And they've lifted like 1 billion people out of poverty in the past 30 years. Problems like horrible pollution and things like that, but they've certainly. I mean, there are a few people starving in the countryside than there were.
Yeah, somebody's pointing out. It may even
Donald Trump can't notice.
Someone was pointing out, he complains about the iPhone being made in China. The iPhone's made by robots, with parts made from all over the world. When they say made in China, that really just refers to final assembly.
Yeah.
It's made for, nothing's made in only one place anymore. I did an article called Made Everywhere. I mean, there's hardly anything that's made in one place. Right, and iPencil's a great example from the 1950s. This is a very old point, like you say. That's why Johnson should read iPencil, and he should read a little Bastiat.
Yeah, the law is 90 pages long. I read it in 9th grade for the first time. And right. I haven't read the big books, but Bastiat is one of the few libertarian econ dudes that I'm supposed to love that I actually do really love. Yeah, because he's really easy to love and so simple and he's so good.
Well, I've been reading him for 40 plus years, and I've never had more respect for him. I mean, the more I read of him, the more I respect him.
Yeah, he's an essential, I think, and he's simple and so enlightening. And you don't need. I imagine there's good stuff in the ginormous Mises and Rothbard tomes that I've yet to crack, but you don't necessarily need those. It's just
depending on what you're doing, you don't need to read those. Depending on what it is what your work is exactly. There's an opportunity cost.
Johnson doesn't need those. He doesn't need to be a perfect minarchist. We're probably not going to get that, much less anything more radical. Sure. But he doesn't. I don't know if he's just not slick at all, or if it is this lack of understanding of a certain basic libertarian principle. I think it might be both, unfortunately.
And my impression is, just from things I've heard, is that he's got a group, right? He's got a group around him. Look, he did win 2 elections, so he must think, okay, I got my team and we succeeded before, and we don't need outside help. We know what we're doing. And so they don't seem open to I know people who have tried to give him information on foreign policy, but there's no sign yet that it's taken. We didn't see it. Didn't turn up in the town hall. He said something about at the town hall. He said, "Well, ISIS attacked us, so therefore we can go to war against them." So there's no depth.
Right.
There. There's no depth.
He vaguely alludes to fewer wars than we have now would be good,
right.
Sort of.
And then he says, and then he always has to throw in, and let's bring Congress into the process. Well, that misses the point. I don't want Congress declaring wars either.
It misses the point and it doesn't, but let's remember what we're asking for and from whom. I want to bring Congress into it in the sense that Congress could be slightly more of a practical hindrance to war than they currently are. So let's throw them in front of wars. That's
true. But Congress is not going to declare war if it's not asked by the president. So if he as president is never asking for a declaration, we're not going to have a declaration. So Congress won't be in on it.
Well, then you just have an AUMF and have drones in any country you want because one guy in the country, looked up an Anwar al-Awlaki speech, and therefore there's a connection to 9/11, and I guess we get to drone. That's foreign policy for you. Whew, we're almost out of time.
Yes, we are, and I'm almost out of battery.
Oh.
Well, I have 29 minutes left.
You could plug it in.
Okay.
I mean, we have like 5 minutes, I think, because we started late, though. We always when I think that. If we have any vaguely concise questions from the people who are watching.
They're having a whole different argument into this.
I don't know. They may not be even watching us right now. They're having their own debate.
Yeah, hello, we're here, folks. If you're going to be in our room, pay attention.
So if
I paid for this microphone.
If they want to ask anything.
Actually, I didn't pay for the microphone.
As usual, they can suggest topics, though I suppose we've been propelled by the news cycle mostly. Somebody on our last YouTube one suggested a topic, and I feel like I should look them up.
What do we think of Jill Stein?
Okay.
Joel wants to know. I saw her on TV. She actually makes a very good, I think she's got a good presence. She's a physician, and she comes across as smart and reasonable. I mean, I don't like the content of most of what she's good on peace.
Yeah, she's
bad on, she doesn't understand economics. Of course, that's what she says about libertarians.
Well, she's worse than that. I looked her up. I did like a graphic for some reason. For third-party graphic for Playboy about Gary Johnson and Jill Stein. Sort of a little infographic about what they are good on. And Stein is really great on a couple of things. She was for gay marriage in 2001, which, unless you're a libertarian, whatever getting credit for that, that's incredibly early. She's, as you say, she's good on peace. She's pretty good on the drug war, better than almost every actual politician. She is astoundingly bad on economics, and she's strangely a bit of a crackpot on science for a physician. And is a little overly skittish of like GMOs and things like that in a way that I think is not very based in science. I mean, I understand if you don't know what's in your food, you don't understand how it works, but like Norman Borlaug, man, like GMOs and it's good stuff.
Well, people act like it's something new.
Yeah.
We've been eating GMO corn for what, 50 years? More than that, probably.
Well, I mean, corn itself, corn was inedible originally or at least I think it was for cattle and stuff, and they started making corn that tasted delicious if you cook it on the grill with some butter. So she's weird. I mean, any well-meaning third-party candidate who's trying to fight the impossible, bipartisan elbows, I give them a little credit unless they're literally Nazis or the American Communist Party, but she's, much like Sanders, she's a bit overrated even ignoring economics, and you can't ignore economics when someone is just literally like a commie. So all right, we should wrap this thing up.
All right,
you should read Sheldon. I don't know if you've been editing again for dollars lately, but you should still read all of Sheldon's works. Every single thing he's ever written. So you should start now. It might take a while. His free association blog, his Patreon.
SheldonRichmond.com.
Yeah, go read all that stuff.
Read Lucy in Any War. I almost went Any War, but read Lucy in Any War.
I took a bit of a...
And Playboy.
Yes. My Twitter is the easiest way to find that sometimes because Google is not... Well, Twitter, LUCYSTAG. I link to Playboy things on there. Or I have my Stag Blog Facebook fan page. Things are up at my Stag Blog page. You can find your way there if you really want to, and I don't know why you wouldn't want to, because it's good. But a lot of it's about politics, so actually I understand why you wouldn't want to. 2 weeks from now, I suddenly realized, isn't it going to be convention time? Because if so, that's where I'm gonna be. And
okay.
As much as I say we should totally do that because doing a podcast from the convention would be awesome, I'm not sure about the logistics right now, so we'll have to discuss that. So you could get a replacement me if you have to, or you could take a fortnight off.
Nobody can replace you.
Thank you. That makes up for the other slight before when you left me to the Nazis.
We must engage in self-preservation.
I think we're done. What do you think? Are we done here?
I think we're done.
All right.
Stay tuned for other great things on Liberty.me. I don't know what they are, but I'm sure there's some.
Horrible conservative Will, who wastes his intelligence on being a conservative. I think tomorrow, isn't it tomorrow, his show, Unbiased American, which is a horrible name for a podcast. Will.
What's the name?
Unbiased America. It's like a trolling name because it's Will is just such a waste of intellect because he's a conservative and it just breaks my heart. But you should watch that anyway because he can be entertaining, and that's tomorrow. I feel like he's going to talk about Hillary Clinton. He's tomorrow at 9, I think. Look it up. He's all right. He's all right.
All right. Well, we look forward to your dispatches from the conventions.
Oh, it's going to be awful. I'm going to die. It's going to be great. It's going to be. I'm excited and terrified.
You'll have a great time.
Thank you, audience who's watching. It's nice to have a lively chat room, even if you guys were half ignoring us. Thanks, audience that's watching us now. Thank you, Sheldon. It's always a pleasure to talk to you about the worst people in the world, as we do.
Same here.
All right. I'll see you.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.